Hello, welcome to another episode of Video Feedback Applied Techniques. Um, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about digital cameras. I'm using a digital camera in this feedback chain right now, and some other quirks and pros and cons that you might encounter when working with digital signals. Um, so yeah, let me just describe the signal chain for you right off. What I have here is a digital Canon camera, which has an HDMI out. The HDMI is plugged into a Roland V4EX, which has a downscaler, which takes an HD signal, can take any HDMI signal, and then downscale it to SD. And then I'm mixing that with the PNP thing here, but I'm going to, later on in this tutorial, I'm going to go over mixing the same signal with itself in different affected ways. So we'll have to lose the PNP, but we'll have to deal with that when it comes. But yeah, I'm also HDMI out from the Roland V4EX into an LCD screen, the same LCD I used for last time. So one thing to notice is that I'm using a lot of HDMI cables. When you use HDMI cables, you will notice a definite slowing down of everything happening. One of the really positive after effects of slowing down your feedback signal is you get this really slow, oozing, detailed structure that's happening on the screen here, which I'm not even sure is going to make it through to the YouTube upload. It's not just the slow reaction diffusion patterns that are showing up everywhere, but it's the slow hue shifting. Let me see if I can get a little bit more hue happening here. Yeah, see how slow that hue shifting was compared to if you go back a couple videos when I was working with the analog cameras? Even an analog camera and an LCD screen, it would not be this slow unless you had some sort of a frame buffer delay involved in the mix. But yeah, so HDMI, very slow compared to SD, because SD video signals are just electrical signals, and they move at the speed of electricity, and HDMI signals are digital signals. They need to be processed they need to be digitally processed and manufactured into your pixels before anything happens. So there's just a natural delay that will happen, which can be really great if you know how to take advantage of such things. Oh yeah, another thing to note, so the really complex structure, another part of that is just simply that this camera can sense more pixels than the other camera I was using could. There's just not enough depth in my old consumer quality analog signal VHS camera to get this sort of a fine resolution, but this camera can, even though it's being downscaled and then I think upscaled again at the end of the chain. Even with that caveat, this is just simply not a structure and kind of behavior that is really going to be possible with an analog signal chain. You can get a coarser version of it, of course, but definitely not with this depth. And I also wanted to mention, before we go any further, is that the size of the screen, the physical actual size of the screen, doesn't necessarily matter, because size of screen and resolution, are not a one-to-one. With LCD screens, you can have really tiny screens that have really high resolutions. That's what if you have a smartphone, your smartphone that can handle an HD signal is packing a lot of pixels into a really tiny space. So you can just get stuff like this. This is a 5-inch or a 7-inch. It's a 5-inch, I think. LCD screen that was manufactured to put in your car so you can park easier or keep your offspring distracted by lights and sounds. And I've gotten, with this camera and that screen, I can get pretty much this same kind of structure. So you don't need a giant LCD screen to get really detailed structures. You can do it with really, really small ones, which is very nice if you are someone who travels around and plays out a lot. So yeah. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about? Oh yeah, let's talk about white balance. The last camera I've been using for these videos just had auto white balance. There was no way to like control that. But this camera it doesn't have iris control, which my other camera had, which was nice, but it does have, you can turn off the auto white balance and like control that in a little digital menu here. So I have white balance turned off. And I'm going to show you why, because I'll turn it back on in just a second. Here is me turning on auto white balance on this camera. And you notice right away it got really, really stuttery. It's the structures are getting lost, and the hue shifting is being lost too. The structures are being lost because the auto white balance is having a real hard time figuring out what the right level of exposure is happening because this is a chaotic signal flow. And I think because it's stuttering back and forth, it's not giving the hues time to shift because it's sort of messing up the autofocus on this. This camera also has autofocus, which I really don't know how to turn off yet, and it's super frustrating, and it'll probably come up at some point in this video. I recommend never getting a camera where you can't turn off, where you don't have a manual focus. But yeah, let me turn this auto white balance off and just see immediately how the picture stabilized and how we're getting this glorious hue shifting back in. And yeah, I can go into the menu and show you a little bit of, I'm just going to like mess around with the exposure a bit. Let me turn it up some. And it's just going to, if you do it too much, it'll just sort of like blast out the whites. But as you go back and forth between them, so it's like I said before, there's usually not necessarily a sweet spot so much as a sweet range that you wish to like go back and forth on, especially with like controlling the qualities and like processing of light, like your brightness especially. So here's me turning it down. See, as I turn down the exposure, we're getting a little bit more of that flickering, and it's making the autofocus do things I don't want it to. And let me see if I can fix this. Okay, cool. Alright, so that's pretty much what I wanted to cover with digital cameras and HDMI and whatnot. So, let's look at some things you can do when you just have one mixer, one camera, and you just mix and you process the same camera feed in different ways and mix them together. So I'm going to lose the PNP. Rest assured that it will still exist from this part of my body up to this part, you know, right about my hairline to my nipples, even when the picture is gone. But you will only be hearing my voice because I didn't want to involve another mixer in this whole setup. Okay, so here we are, PNP fractalized, and let me just turn this off. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to invert black and white on one channel, and then I'm going to slowly fade the unprocessed channel into the black and white inverted channel, and I'm doing that right now. So because I'm only inverting black and white and not the color, it's allowing all the hue shifting to still happen. Slowly going. And this is a pattern that is really remnant of the kind of stuff you get in an internal line with internal feedback, but with the benefit that I can control it with my hands. I'm moving the camera back and forth. I'm going to turn up the exposure a bit and just blast things out, and then I'll turn the exposure back down and get some more clearly defined lines. zoom out a little, or zoom in. Get things slowly moving towards the camera. Zoom out a bit. Alright, so I'm right about at 50% here. And it's getting a little confused. And now I'm over closer to the inverted signal. And now here's 100% inverted signal. Getting a lot of strobing. This is really, really bumming out the autofocus on this one. So you notice I'm getting a lot less color, a lot less of the dramatic hue shifting with just the black and white inverted. I don't know why that is. I'll have to think about that for a bit, and maybe I won't figure it out. So another thing we can try with one channel inverted and another channel unaffected is I'm going to try keying in. I'm going to try Luma keying in to the blacks. So let's see how this works. So you can see the inverted channel is coming in, sort of messing around. So this is really, really detailed stuff that is happening. Wow. So you can kind of see what's happening here is we're getting, by keying in instead of blending in, we're getting a pretty similar effect to what was happening when we were just in the inverted channel, but we've kept the hue shifting. Because I think the brightest aspects are still in the unaffected channel and they're being sort of cast over, they're being keyed over into the inverted channel. So there's a tiny bit of strobing, but it's certainly not like unpleasantly seizure-inducing. I'm getting this really, really great, sharp, sort of complex landscape pattern happening in the middle that I wasn't getting from either of the channels individually. So that's pretty great. Let's also see what happens if we swap them out. Instead of keying in the one to the other, let's try switching out which one's negative. So the negative channel is going to be the one that keys into the unaffected one. Wow, so that's pretty weird. I didn't really test this one out. So we're getting some stroby biz happening. Getting some weird growths on the side here. I kind of figured there would be some strobing happening. If you just think about the process at hand, there would have to be some, because of the channel that's being the key channel is strobing back and forth because of the inverted feedback. It's gonna make the keying strobe like that. Yeah, so I swapped back to the other version now. Some other fun things you can do. So, a lot of mixers will have various sorts of transformations. I'm going to talk for a bit, so let me just switch this back. So a lot of mixers will have these sort of like transformations where they will flip and or mirror the image. And I just want to go over a little bit about the difference between flip and mirror and how that works in feedback. Let's turn off the negative. So a flip is going to take the image that comes in and flip the whole thing around, horizontally or vertically, depending on which one you have selected. Whereas a mirror is going to take the signal that comes in, split it down the middle, and just take the data that you have from that one side and use that to fill in the other side. This is going to have actual effects. They'll end up looking somewhat the same, but they're getting processed differently, and they will actually like do different things on the feedback. And I just want to show you how different they are. So I'm going to turn a vertical flip on the feedback channel right now. So the vertical flip on the feedback channel, you can see how slow this HDMI signal processing is, because the strobing that we saw, and the strobing that you're still seeing where it's like dancing back and forth, is that's like the camera sensing. That's how long it takes the camera to sense that a flip has happened and to bring it back over and stabilize. And you see, as I keep moving around up here, there's a slight delay that's happening from the top to the bottom. So that's a flip. But notice, let me go over, let me not do this whole thing, and let me go over and grab a mirror instead. So here is horizontal mirror. So you notice there wasn't that like bloop, 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 back and forth when I turned on the mirror, because the mirror is, it's not affecting the whole image. The mirror is only processing half of the image, if that makes sense. So it's still affecting, basically, the whatever the camera sees on the mirror side is just getting ignored in the processing. So it's just grabbing the stuff from the side that this side that I'm on, the original eye, not that other duplicate mirror version of myself. And so you don't get that like really speedy strobing. So that is definitely something to note when you're doing flips and mirrors, is strobe zones and processing and whatnot. I think that might be just about it for this episode. Keep it kind of short. Probably the next time I do one of these, I will do digital cameras and analog screens and talk a bit about that. And then maybe talk about having two cameras and using two cameras in one mixer to do two kinds of, two cameras, one mixer, two screens. How does that sound? I don't know why I'm pretending that this is a conversation that we're having. Yeah, I'm just going to play around with this some more. Let me do some weird fractal-y things. So as you can see, you can definitely get some really complex fractal structures if you P two channels together and then do like various like flips. This is just mirror H1. You can do like, this one has way too many mirrors. The Adderall ones have way too many mirrors, I think. At least for feedback stuff. Sometimes it works out interesting, but a lot of times it is just way too busy. So yeah, here's mirroring both sides. And the camera really does not know how to deal with this one at all. And many of the things I'm saying here are going to apply to internal feedback as well. I can actually just try to show you an internal chain and what happens with that. While I got everything set up at the moment. So yeah, I'm going to swap this over. I'm going to replace the camera chain with an internal chain, and then we'll see what this sort of fractal processing does with internal feedback. And here we go! What? I'm just messing around, so there's still the brightness chroma key set up. So I'm messing around with the brightness threshold and inverting one of the channels is what's going on here. I turned the camera feedback back on. That was pretty neat for a second, but it seemed like it was going to go out of control. Here's me zooming in a bit. No, zooming out. Whoa! Here's me inverting one of the channels. Cool. I think this is probably just about it for this episode. Hi. Cool. Well, thanks a bunch for watching, and yeah, I hope this was useful and fun and entertaining and educational. Cool. See you next time.